Hi, do you know what my thoughts are today? And my thoughts are today are going to take us right back to the Middle East, where we were with yesterday's thoughts. And the reason is because so many surprising and hopeful and optimistic things actually have been happening in the Middle East only recently. It's, ever since October 7th, there were changes before that, the Abraham Accords, which we'll be actually discussing again today, but from a really surprising and very, as I was saying, optimistic angle. But yesterday's vlog, I mentioned that now Egypt and the Palestinian Authority are calling or demanding that Hamas disarm, that they disarm. That never happened before. And that is, it's a hopeful sign. And what I'm going to tell you today is another hopeful, maybe even more hopeful sign, something that it was kind of in the back of my brain, my brain's back burner, because this doesn't, in a way, that it's happening so soon, I guess, that it's surprising me. And there are some caveats that I will be getting to, but it has to do with Syria, the new leader of Syria. And, he really... let's just go right to the headline. Syrian leader has expressed interest in normalizing ties with Israel. Report. New Syrian President Ahmad al-Shara says that Damascus, under the right conditions, seeks to normalize ties with Israel. U.S. Congressman Corey Mills tells Bloomberg after meeting with the president in Syria on Friday. Mills said he held talks with Shara about the conditions for removing U.S.-imposed economic sanctions, as well as peace with Israel, according to the report. Shara told Mills during their meeting that Syria is interested, under the right conditions, in joining the Abraham Accords, the series of normalization agreements that U.S. President Donald Trump's previous administration negotiated between Israel and the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and others. That surprise, in a way, it, as I said, didn't surprise me because Shara hasn't been. By the way, they called him the president. He's supposed to be the way things go in these Middle Eastern countries. Mahmoud Abbas was elected more than a decade ago for a 4-year term, and he's still there. I think he's in his 14th or 17th year or something of his 4-year term. So we'll have to see. Maybe this Shara is the president of Syria now, but he's supposed to be. He's been described as the interim president because they have to write a constitution and hold elections, which he very well could win. But there's something interesting about him. I'm going to give you some caveats about however hopeful what I just quoted to you seems, that, and it could be sincere, but he... remember Arafat everywhere. It's funny, pretending to be a warrior. I don't know how much he ever actually fought, but at the United Nations, at the White House, everywhere he goes, he's wearing a military uniform. Now, Shara, he was the leader of a rebel group, the main rebel group that overthrew Assad and exiled him from the country, or forced Assad to flee the country. He actually was fighting, and he was in a uniform, but now, as the leader, or at least for now, of Syria, he wears a suit. And actually, I'll put him up again. I'm putting it up again because he's wearing a suit and pretty snappy dresser, I have to admit. And especially compared to other presidents, you see these G7 meetings, whatever, or every American president that I can remember in my entire life, and I think going all the way back to as long as presidents wore suits, modern day suits. It's always like a dark suit and, dark navy blue or black or something, and a white shirt, always the white shirt. And I don't know why that has to be that way, but anyways, little digression there. The snappy dresser there. But there are a couple caveats. Now, this is very hopeful, though, because Syria has not been calling for the destruction of Israel, and they've protested Israel attacking some sites in Israel, he understands that Israel is just attacking chemical weapons stores, weapons left over from the Assad administration, things that Israel would not want used against Israel, and it looks like Syria is not putting up a whole big, he complains occasionally, but not putting up a whole big fuss about that, because apparently he doesn't want to be in a fight with Israel. And also he is taking steps to prevent the transfer of arms from Iran to Hezbollah. Hezbollah is really hurting now because they don't have this supply. I mean, you can probably smuggle a little bit. I mean, and the border is not completely sealed, but working against that. And so that's a hopeful sign that he's not cooperating with Iran the way that Assad was. And well, for one reason, because he doesn't have to depend on Assad to keep him, on Iran to keep him in power, as Assad had to do. So that's kind of obvious there. Now, the caveats, of course, are number one, he's wearing a suit, but maybe that's, sheep's clothing, because he was, at least until he became president, very radical Islamist. So it depends, but he may be seeing the value of understanding that Israel, they've made clear, if the Israelis wanted to depose him, prevent him from taking power, they could have done it, but they haven't. It seems like he wants an accommodation, that he wants to run Syria, but he is not one of these people. He's like Syria, like Jordan and Egypt, that he does not want to be in a war with Israel, and may want relations with, if nothing else, which would still be an improvement, a cold peace, you could call it, like with Jordan, such as Israel has with Jordan and Egypt. Now, there's still a lot of anti-Semitism, in both places, in both countries, and they don't have really warm interaction. I think Israelis vacation on a beach in the Sinai or something like that, but you don't have you don't see like the kind of interaction, the economic interaction that you see in with the in Bahrain and the Emirates, because of as a result of the Abraham Accords. Even though, because there is a peace treaty, has been for decades, between say Israel and Egypt, so you have the Israelis vacationing in the Sinai in Egypt. Egyptians are free to travel to Israel if they want to, and a few have, and they've spoken very favorably of Israel. I've read some articles by them, but that's very rare, and that's what you want to see, is interaction and economic interaction. You're seeing it. Israel sells gas to Egypt. At the governmental level, you're seeing cooperation, and obviously all these meetings, often meetings between Israel and Egypt, and they are actually mediating right now between to get the hostages back and all this peace. Ceasefire stuff. Egypt is acting as a mediator, as an intermediary between Israel and Hamas. But you're not seeing at the ground level. You're not seeing businessmen, as far as I know, doing business with private Israeli businesses doing business with Egyptian businesses, which is a real shame, because it would benefit both sides greatly, but especially Egypt. Egypt is not they're constantly relying on domestic aid. Israel Israel gets military aid, most of which they're supposed to use, spend any money they get. Almost all of it, 75% of it, has to be spent in the United States. Comes right back to us and creates jobs. But Bahrain and the Emirates, completely different, and that looks like that is the kind of relation that Syria is talking about. Now, if Syria and Israel had that kind of relationship, then there would be peace. There would be no war. And what's even better, because remember, Israel now has relations with Sudan and Morocco. They may have had relations with Morocco before, I don't remember. And Turkey, of course, even though the Turks are not Arabs. But it looks like there's a possibility that Saudi Arabia, that they're going to be the odd man out, because they're demanding recognition or create a pathway to a Palestinian state. And that's another thing that this president of Syria, Syria, is not demanding. He's not demanding nothing to do with no demands regarding a Palestinian state. So that's another good sign. Now, the final caveat that I see here, he's saying under the right conditions. So a lot would depend, what are those conditions? And one condition I saw floated, and it makes sense to me, is wanting Israel to give back the Golan Heights, which Israel annexed decades ago, and which we recognized. Trump did. Actually, it was Trump that did it. Was a president that recognized the Golan Heights is now part of Israel, that it was annexed by Israel. Now, the Syrians might want that back, and the carrot they would hold out would be full diplomatic relations and joining the Abraham Accords with Israel and with Bahrain and the Emirates and whoever else, hopefully someday. Syria. Now, the problem is, I've been on the Golan Heights, and the problem is that the strategic value, to really appreciate it, you have to stand there. Now, this is going way back. I was there in 1968. I mean, I understand there's farming there and everything, and plots of land, precisely because Israel has it now. But when I was there, it was 1968, 1 year after the 1967 war. I was young, I was only 15, and but I remember very well, there was all you saw were just pillboxes, gun and artillery emplacements. And it was because you stand on the Golan Heights. I mean, it's a height, it's a hill, and you stand on that hill and you just look out and down, and you have all this farmland, Israel, just spread out before these guns, and very easy to lob shells down there. Israel in the 67 war, they had to fight like crazy to get up to the Golan Heights and take them over. And so now Israel is looking down on Syria so they can see an attack coming from a height, and they're in a position to, fire munitions down instead of having munitions fired down at them. And the big difference that on the Israeli side, it was farmland and civilians. On the Syrian side, whatever the Israel haters want to say, it would only be an invasion against against an army, tanks or whatever. So Israel right now, standing here today, there's no way they're going to give back the Golan Heights. But it is possible, and this is something I would mention if I were Trump. I mean, Trump is into this mediating stuff with Ukraine and Russia, which is a waste of time, and talking to Iran, which it may be my next vlog, which is also a waste of time. So if he wants to do something useful, mediating between Syria and Israel would actually, I would believe, just as he did with, especially if we're talking about the Abraham Accords, the mediation he did, or actually his son-in-law, Jared Kushner did, between Bahrain and the Emirates on one side and Israel on the other side. That would really be useful and potentially productive. But if Syria were to join the Abraham Accords, if you had full diplomatic interaction, and I don't just mean at the government level like we see in Jordan and Egypt, I mean the kind of on the ground level. I mean, they're doing the trade between Israel and the Emirates and Bahrain are among them. exceeded everybody's expectations. The volume, the billions of dollars of trade that was expected several years, that it would take several years, came very quickly. And both sides, and the Israelis and Bahrainis, Israelis, I know a lot of them travel frequently now to, say, Bahrain. I don't know how much travel there is the other way, but there has been travel. And that's very good, because say they'll go to Tel Aviv and see that it's a very polyglot city with people, lots of Arabs, lots of fellow Arabs, Arabic speakers there, and people, Christians too, Druze, and just about everybody. So that is, if you had that in Syria, then I could see, just as Berlin being divided for 40 years, then now they're united. Now it's no longer East Berlin. I was in Germany in 1986 and it was still divided. I was in Dusseldorf, which was so far. I would have loved to see Berlin, but it would take a heck of a long. You have to go. You have to go to East Germany. You have to drive through East Germany to get to at that time West Berlin. But again, if you have a full relationship, if the relations between and interactions between Syria and Egypt are like ideally like between the United States and Canada, though there's a little, little disputes, a few disagreements there on trade. So and Canadians are kind of holding back on their trial. But normally, we'll just say, as between Bahrain and the Emirates on the one side and Israel on the other, then it would be possible, if that kind of situation is still in place, and maybe even better and better and better and better. After 20 years, maybe Israel would trust the Syrians enough to give back the Golan Heights, or they could share the Golan Heights. So that would be a way that, if I were Trump mediating, that would be, or Netanyahu could do it himself. I would throw that out, not as something definite, but as a possibility. I have, a Martin Luther King. I have a dream type of thing. I have a dream of when Israel and Syria being friends. And actually, I remember now an article I read some time ago. There were Jews all over the Middle East. They were ethnically cleansed after the 48 war, which is funny because Israel is 20% Arab, but it's 0% just about in all the other surrounding countries. If you talk about ethnic cleansing and all these accusations against Israel, but that's another story for another day. The point is that this article I read, and I hope I can end on this, but some Syrians, an interview with just some regular Syrians in a little Syrian village where Jews used to live, and there was actually a store with some that had, you could see the faded sign work. It was a Jewish store. Jews owned that store. And they said that they miss the Jews. They wish they would come back. So maybe that would happen too, and that would really be wonderful. So I just had to share that, because I just, all these developments, positive developments in just a few days. And this is the irony. I guess I have one more thing I have to end on, which is the irony, because the whole reason that Hamas invaded Israel on October 7th was they wanted to trigger a wide Middle East war, or an intifada, whatever the heck. They wanted to invade Israel and then inspire Hezbollah to invade Israel from the north, and from the, I guess they have this fantasy of Jordan joining in, and maybe even Egypt, and Iran, of course, would start raining missiles on it. The idea is that they wanted to start a Middle East war, but they get all these countries to unite. And they did accomplish getting them to unite, but the irony is getting them to unite to throw Hamas under the bus and at least beginning the process of making peace with Israel. I just think it's an irony, but it's a wonderful irony, and I'm happy to end on a positive note today. So thanks for stopping by. That's it for today. Your thoughts would be welcome on this subject in the comment section below the video. Share this video with anyone you think would benefit from it. But most of all, come back and see me. Did I say subscribe? Yeah, subscribe. Doesn't hurt to repeat it. But most of all, come back and see me again. I'd love to see all of you again. And until I do see all of you again, bye.